You're listening to The Flickcast, a pop culture podcast about stuff nerds love. I am Chris Ulrich, and joining me, as he always does, thank goodness, because he makes me sound so much better and so much more intelligent, is my good friend Joe Dilworth. Hello, Joe.
Hello, but I beg to differ. You're the more intelligent. You're the Stan to my
sweet.
Ollie. Is which one? I forget which one of those is smarter. But anyway,
I think it's Stan. Stan Laurel was the smart one, maybe, and Ollie was the dumb one. Or was he dumb, or was he just like, I'll let you take the spotlight, Stan, because I don't need to. My ego does not need to be stroked by being. It's like a drummer in a rock band, right? It's like, I'll be the cool guy who keeps the beat, but I don't get all the chicks. I'm not in the front.
Right. I'm in the back. No one knows, and I'm okay with that because.
Unless you're Tommy Lee or something, and your drum cage revolves or some shit.
Right, drops from orbit or some crazy stuff like that.
Exactly.
You're the Abbott to my Costello. That's it.
Are we going to talk about Elon Musk dropping from orbit again? Oh, now both of those dudes are like fighting to see who can go to space first, right? It's Branson versus Musk, or is it versus Bezos? Actually, it's Bezos versus Bezos. It's so good. It's so good that billionaires can
fight over who gets to go to space first.
Can focus on the important things in the world. You have all this money. You can use it for good, but whatever.
Right. I'm going to build my moon chalet before you do. So.
Yeah, exactly. How many yachts can you water ski behind? That was the line from
yes.
Wall Street.
No,
I don't judge a man by the size of his wallet. It's good old Martin Sheen.
Right. No, Elon Musk is not going to space. Apparently, he lives in a tiny house on the property of SpaceX.
He does?
Yeah. He was saying something like yesterday or the day before about because somebody was asking, what's it like being a billionaire and living in like a fancy house and stuff. And he's like, actually, I rent a house. I rent a $50,000 house on the property of SpaceX, and then he said he had some other property that he was selling or something like that. So,
wow, where does his wife and child live, though? That's the real question.
Well, maybe that's why he likes it. I don't know.
He's like, I like this place because it's away from
right.
my child robot or whatever his name is.
Like, no, honey, I have to live on the property of work because I'm working a lot.
I gotta supervise the workers, otherwise I'll try to unionize or something.
We're not going to land on Mars by ourselves. Oh, wait.
Anyway, yeah, apparently this became an Elon Musk podcast again.
Yeah, that's all right.
I'm sorry, it just bothers me, and I don't know why it does. It just bothers me that people with so much money, like Branson and Bezos, they could be doing so much with their money, and yet their biggest beef is like, here's how big my dick is. No, my dick is bigger, and it's going to go to space before yours. It's like, come on, guys.
Well, I'm going to be completely honest, too. When they were like, oh, Richard Branson says he's going to beat Bezos to space, I was like, Richard Branson, he's still alive. Okay.
Yeah, he's still alive.
I haven't heard from him in a while. So the only time we really hear from him is when he likes to boast about stuff. So I don't know.
Well, exactly. Although, whatever. Anyway, you can find the podcast, TheFlickcast.com, and you can find it at Stitcher and Spotify, and you can find it at Apple Podcasts, of course. And if you like the show, you can give it a rating at Apple Podcasts in particular, because that helps juke the algorithm, as they say.
Juke? I haven't heard that in a while.
I know. Juke the stats, or, whatever it is. But and you can, of course, if you like the show, although this last bit, you probably forget about that part, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/theflickcast, and you find us on the socials. What Joe writes is Joe, and I am at Chris U, and of course at the Flickcast, all that stuff. So thank you for all your support so far. Our rating is still pretty good, and apparently people enjoy listening to this kind of thing. I don't know why exactly, but they do. So thank you for that.
Because, I know our friends and families don't like listening to us babble, but complete strangers are cool with it, so that's good.
So it can't be just people we know, right? It has to be others, too, so that's good.
Exactly.
Because you would think, like you said, the people that we know in real life, IRL, would be tired of our bullshit by now.
Yes, yes.
So thank you, complete strangers. Yeah. I appreciate that.
Everyone I know is like, oh, God, Joe's going off about movies again. I gotta...
Oh, this guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, one thing that I do, which annoys people, is I talk about, when I'm watching a movie, I can't help but notice the how it was made. Right?
Yes,
how the sausage is made. I can see it.
Yep.
So I go, oh, there's a light there. Oh, notice how that's one take, and people are like, shut up, God, would you please?
Yeah.
Now my son does it too, which is funny. It's like, that must be a green screen. I'm like, nope, that's a cyclorama, son. It's like,
He's like, oh.
oh, because they didn't have green screen back then. They had Sykes though. So there you go.
Well, no, in my house, well, it's the same thing in my house, but I will frequently pause something we're watching, and Melanie's just basically like, okay, what cool thing did they just do that I missed? I'm like, that was one take. It wasn't really one take, but it was.
It wasn't.
They made it look like it. It was awesome. And she's like, I didn't even catch that. And I'm like, you don't have to. That's fine.
It didn't even occur to me. Can we go on, please? For God's sake?
You're right. She's like, can we finish the episode now? So I did that for Loki, unfortunately. And she's like, oh my God, can we just finish the episode?
Was kind of a one take last week, but not this past episode though, which
No.
we'll get to. Of course, we have to talk about Loki. Duh.
Yes.
But the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that I'm angry.
You're angry.
I'm not angry. I'm just really disappointed because I really liked the show Lovecraft Country on HBO.
Ah, yes.
I really enjoyed the show because I like that kind of world, and I thought it was neat the way they did that. They did the monsters and they did the whole thing, and it was, there was good social commentary and
Yes.
and all that. It seemed relevant for the times. It seemed like a perfect show to keep going, and yet HBO, in its infinite wisdom, has decided not to pursue a second season, which is disappointing. I'm disappointed, Joe. I'm not gonna lie.
No, I agree with you because I mean, certainly they did a good they did a good job telling a story over the episodes that we got, but also not like truncating the entire story. I mean, it was like, oh, there's enough here. What's gonna happen next? I'd like to see that. And
it didn't really end satisfyingly. I mean, it was a cliffhanger ending.
Yes.
It's not like Watchmen, which made sense as a one-off. I mean, you can see that being one season. It was a very complete story, and it was very well executed. It's like, well, what else we got to do? Because we fucking knocked it out of the park for this one.
Yeah.
But Lovecraft Country was very, very good, and I enjoyed it very much. And I think that it could have lent itself to more seasons and more episodes. But maybe, who knows? Maybe some other network will pick it up. Probably not. It's probably really expensive, too.
Well, so I guess my question is, maybe it was the expense, but I thought it did really well as far as like number of people watching it, plus critical and audience praise. So it's like, what I don't, obviously, again, I'm doing a podcast in a room in my small house, so I obviously don't make those kind of decisions and know about the inner workings like that, or else I would be making more money doing movie stuff. But I just don't understand, like, even if it was like, okay, so it's going to be more money for a second season, it seems like it's a no-brainer. But anyway, I'm babbling. Sorry.
Yeah, and the thing is, HBO is talking about how it was a mutual decision about the creative direction of the show, blah, 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 blah. But then Misha Green comes on Twitter and is saying, here's a taste of season 2. We could have brought you, I wish. So that means that it wasn't that mutual, it sounds like.
She wasn't part of the mutual part.
No. So my theory, if you want to know, here's a theory.
I do. I have one too, but go ahead.
Okay. She and HBO butted heads a lot. That's my theory. And so and they decided it wasn't worth the trouble, maybe. Or they didn't want it to be, because I feel like that Misha Green and other creatives on the show wanted it to be more political,
right?
Which I'm fine with.
Yes.
But I don't know that her vision and HBO's aligned. Yes. Because HBO doesn't exist in a vacuum. They're part of Warner Media, which is part of some huge conglomerate, I'm sure, or whatever. But so anyway, I think that they should have brought it back, but whatever.
Yeah, no, my theory is pretty much the same as yours. I think it that extended to like probably it depends on what deal they had, whether it could have been like, this is my show and if I'm not a part of it, it doesn't get made, which is doubtful, but I bet HBO is like, yeah, we want it more to be this way. How much will we pay to bring in someone else to run the show? What's the bad publicity likely on that? And it may have also been like, the actors are probably like, yeah, we're not going to be a part of this if she isn't. So Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That could be, but they have contracts. That's the
Well,
problem.
that's true.
Everyone has contracts.
Well, it depends on what those are too, because a number of them are now doing other projects and some high profile stuff. So it may have been like, whatever expense it would take to retain them, possibly, and make them work in a hostile. Yeah, it's probably just like, well, she doesn't want to be involved, and she's not going to make the show we want anyway. Let's just move on because we have other stuff.
Well, yeah. Invariably, it comes down. Oh, not invariably, but most of the time, it comes down to economics. So it's like you're right. It's how expensive is it going to be to go forward,
right,
with the situation that we have with someone who's disgruntled or does not agree with our vision. And I'm not saying she's wrong. I'm saying she's probably right, to be honest.
Yeah.
This is Misha Green I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And HBO, I think, is the villain in this scenario. But they're just like, oh, profits are down, blah, 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 blah. We had COVID, we had this, we had that. So we have to get a number. I mean, or they tried to cut the budget maybe, or they tried to like lower the price for the second season.
Yeah.
Or they tried to, to creatively tell her, this is what we want and whatever. So, and it does come down to numbers, and a lot of times I think, and so the numbers didn't make sense to the bean counters.
Yeah.
And that was the end of it. They pulled the plug. But you're, I mean, the actors typically are at least 3 season contracts. I mean, they have raises per season. They have like, increases and whatever. I mean, sometimes 5 seasons depending on the show, but HBO I think is typically 3. With options for 4 and 5 and 6 and whatever, but everything's not going to be Game of Thrones or some show that lasts for 20 years.
Exactly.
So, but they want to lock people in for a while. But yeah, I mean, this show could have filmed any time. I mean, yeah, other people on the show are going on to do other things, but like Jonathan Majors for sure is like, well, when it gets bandied around lately, especially with Loki and then
yes,
with Kang supposedly appearing in the new Spider-Man film, we'll see, but the other ones are good. Other people, everyone's going to get more work out of this because the other lady whose name totally escapes me, and I feel like an asshole, but she's on Loki right now. So
right, so it's
I'm gonna mispronounce this. Wunmi Mosaku. God, I'm an asshole. I'm sorry. I wish I could pronounce people's names. I feel terrible that I'm terrible at that.
Hunter B-15.
Hunter B-15, who has a great part in this episode, by the way.
Yes.
Which we'll get to in a minute.
Yes. We'll get to Loki, honest.
We will. So that's one thing that pissed me off. And the 2 other things I was going to mention is I watched a bunch of movies this week, even though it was a weird week. I watched The Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt, which will win, and Yvonne Strahovski, which love her. She's awesome.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome. She was great in Chuck. That was such a good show.
Yeah, she was great in Chuck. She's been great in that show about, oh boy, I'm terrible. Handmaid's Tale. Thank you. Damn, that took time to get there.
Wow.
Just pregnant pause. Oh, I shouldn't say that.
Jeez.
Under his eye. No.
Too soon.
Too soon. No, she's great in that show too. And then a bunch of other people whose name just totally escapes me. Anyway, I watched that, and then I watched No Sudden Move, the new Steven Soderbergh film on HBO Max. Which, by the way, no spoilers, but it's a fucking masterpiece. The movie is so great.
I watched neither of those, but I will before the next episode.
We're going to get to those next week. Yes. We'll talk about those next week. But the No Sudden Move is amazing. I'm like, it's right up my alley. It's noir kind of crime stuff with social commentary.
Well,
Soderbergh is a great director and also a great DP. So, because he photographs all his films too. But I really enjoyed it a lot. It was really well done.
It's a movie that sounds right up my alley in all regards. And as I told you, I had not heard anything about it until just before we recorded this episode. And I'm like,
well, it's one of those things that was supposed to be theatrical, but it's HBO, Warner Brothers, HBO Max. They're releasing all their shit on HBO Max. So
right.
But this was. The funny thing is it'll probably get more recognition for being on HBO Max than it would have been in the theaters, because it's not a popular like mainstream kind of movie at all. It's definitely more of a niche audience who likes this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's so well done. Everybody in the movie is great. Benicio del Toro, Don Cheadle, everybody is amazing.
Great cast.
David Harbour, playing against type for sure. Although I'm not sure he has a type, I guess, but he kind of does. Like Harper is kind of or Hopper, not Harper, is kind of a
Yes.
sheriff everyman. But anyway, Harper's great in it. And and Tomorrow War wasn't terrible either. It was just like I made a joke before we started recording. It was big and dumb,
Right.
but entertaining, like Chris Pratt. So there you go.
Well, like the Transformers movies I've been recently rewatching.
I liked it better than the Transformers movies, if that makes sense.
Okay, cool.
So, but we'll get to it. You should watch it and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I will definitely watch both of those. I mean, Soderbergh, I've been a fan of his since his first film. So
Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
yeah, we had that at the art house theater that I managed in North Carolina, and I watched it many, many times, and it was just such a fascinating
It is. It holds up well, except for the technology, of course.
Yeah, but I would say, even though that is like, I don't know, 30 years old, more than 30 years old, it may be my favorite James Spader performance. He's just phenomenal
he's great.
in that. So.
He's great, yeah. You mean better than Ultron? Come on.
Yeah, a little bit better. Well, I don't know. Ultron's pretty fantastic.
I'm turned in
Ultron.
strings.
I wish I could say Ultron the way that Paul Bettany says it.
Ultron.
Ultron. Yes.
Ultron.
Yes.
Paul Bettany's. I like Paul Bettany.
He's awesome.
And I'll say this again. Speaking of Paul Bettany, when are we going to get a sequel to Master and Commander? That's all I'm going to say.
Apparently, they're working on one.
I know. I saw Russell Crowe. He mentioned that. I'm like,
Yeah.
really? Come on.
Yeah, I was
totally
like-
excited about that.
I was like, wait a second. Really? Okay.
I would totally watch. That is one of those movies that people who've never seen it don't understand why it's so awesome. But people need to watch. I know we talked about it a lot, but people need to watch Master and Commander. It's really interesting movie. It's really well done, and it just you're from the moment the movie starts, you're like drawn into this world, and it's so well realized that you basically, you don't leave the world until it's over. It's an amazing film. So anyway,
I don't know that I can add anything else other than if you really want to see a movie made the way movies should be made, go see it.
yeah, it's that good. It's like it's like TV shows like Ted Lasso. I always talk about that show now. It is such a good show, and Master and Commander. I mean, they're totally separate in subject matter and everything, but it's that kind of quality. You can just tell when everyone involved in making something fucking was at the top of their game and also was enjoying themselves and loved it.
Yes.
Like I can tell that they did. And sure, there was probably some hardships when they were filming because there always is pains to make films and TV shows. But it's just the results speak for themselves.
Yes.
That they're just so well done. So anyway, if you haven't seen Ted Lasso, you should see that too.
It's a Peter Weir film, and he makes some pretty exceptional movies. So
He did. Yeah, I don't know why I watched a lot of movies this past week. Buckaroo Banzai again. I watched that.
it was I had meant to watch a lot of movies this week, but it would just ended up being a weird week for other
Yeah, I had a lot of time on my hands while I was
reasons.
just like waiting around for stuff. So it was like, I'm gonna watch this. I watched, like I said, Buckaroo Banzai. I watched Big Lebowski again, which I always love. I always love the commentary when they talk about making the film, the Coen Brothers. So did you give Jeff Bridges any direction during the movie? He's like, no, we pretty much let him do, we left him alone, kind of thing.
Right.
He said sometimes Jeff would come up to us and say, so do you think that the dude burned one on the way over? And they're like, yeah, probably. So he's like, he would go over and like start rubbing his eyes to get them all red, so the dude would look like he was stoned, which I think is funny. But yeah, the dude probably burned one every minute of the day if he could. But,
yeah, probably. Yeah, he would just
anyway.
constantly burn one.
Yeah, the funny thing is Jeff Dowd, who the dude is based on. I actually met Jeff a long time ago. I worked on a movie. Anyway, this will be a quick story. I worked on a movie for some guys whose office building was in the same building that Jeff Dowd's office was in. So Jeff Dowd would come to our office and hang out all the time. He was an interesting guy.
Nice. Was he as eclectic and eccentric as the dude?
He was pretty eclectic, but I didn't know his whole backstory. But I mean, this guy was like a full-on activist and everything. He had done a lot of shit, and I had no idea at the time.
Right. He was the real deal.
He was the real deal. He was like a real like 60s activist guy. And he was a member of the Seattle 7. I mean, it's like he was the real deal. And I didn't know that at the time. And we were just shooting the shit or whatever. He was a totally cool guy. Like I imagined sitting with the dude would be,
Right.
It was just a thing. And he would just come and hang out because he had nothing better to do, I guess. But
Big Lebowski, though, is a great movie. I mean, it's like
it is.
I've said before that there's really no such thing as an absolutely perfect movie, but I would say Big Lebowski comes very, very close. It's one of those movies.
You know what's funny is when I first saw it, I don't know that I was in the right. I was probably because I was sober and not stoned. I was not in the right headspace to enjoy it as much. It's one of those movies that on subsequent viewings over the years, I've grown to love it, and it's become a part of me. You know, it's like when I first watched Scott Pilgrim.
Right.
I was like, oh, that's pretty good. But it didn't become as interesting to me. And over the years, that's sort of evolved into something I really love. I watch it all the time now. But yeah, I don't know. This week was just weird. I ended up watching a lot of stuff. But anyway, I mean,
they're like
including Loki. Go for
yes. Those movies are like a great wine that you tried one time and you're like, this is really good. I'm going to get some bottles of this. And you open a bottle like every once in a while as it matures, and it's like, I enjoy this even more now. So
it's like the whitest thing you could have said.
I know. They're like an onion. They're like an ogre.
It's like a fine wine. It ages. It's like a fine cheese.
They're like a single malt scotch. You know,
a nice aged brie.
Yeah.
Jeez, man, you have any white wine spritzers with your brie?
No, only Bartles and James wine coolers. Come
my
on.
God, Bartles and James. I know I've said this before, but one year my friend and I dressed like Bartles and James for Halloween.
That's so awesome.
When we were in school, and probably in high school maybe.
I just remember, in high school when you get someone to buy there's like 6 of you and you got someone to buy like 2 of them and you're like sharing 2 wine coolers among 6 kids and you're like
so wasted.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, we're really hitting the hard stuff. It's like, oh no.
Well, that was the funny thing. It was hard to get booze, but it was always easy to get weed. So I don't know.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I had never had trouble finding weed. Always had trouble finding booze. I don't know why.
We actually didn't have any problem getting booze because a friend of ours had a fake ID. And
nice.
He was able in high school to grow a pretty adult-looking beard, so he just did that and used his fake ID and bought us stuff all the time. But as kids, you have no idea, so you pull together the money you have. So it's always like, oh, buy us a bottle of Mad Dog or wine coolers or something like that, or Budweiser or Ham's beer, because you could get that for like $2 for like a case or something.
Any box wine? Because that's good.
Right. This is before box wine.
This is before box wine. Yeah,
yes.
I know it was. Yeah.
We would have bought it then because it would have been like, oh, we could put something over it so nobody knows what it is, right? Yeah. Oh, those days.
Yeah, there was a couple liquor stores in my town that would sell to you even if you didn't present ID.
Well, there were some of the rural counties in North Carolina,
like some gas stations or something would sell to you. They didn't care.
Yeah, there's like whatever.
But you could always get. You know what? There's always some kind-hearted adult who would buy something.
Yeah, exactly. That's
here we got $20. Can you get us a 12-pack?
That's the after-school special we never got. Is the kindly
how to buy liquor from.
The kids have to rally around in the neighborhood to save the elderly guy that's going to get evicted because
he's the one who buys them all the beer.
Yeah, exactly. He buys them all their booze. So,
but yeah, that's the funny thing. And I don't remember ever having too much trouble. You're right. I don't remember having too much trouble getting beer or whatever. But I really remember just there being so many drugs around when I was growing up too.
Oh yeah,
not just weed, but like other shit too. And it never seemed to be troublesome to find anything, when you're a kid. So I got to imagine it's even worse now for kids. And this stuff is a lot worse. But, I mean, the weed we used to get had, like, seeds in it and shit. So, it was good.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you scrape this off the bottom of the whatever?
Right. Yeah. But we didn't know. It was just like, oh, yeah, weed.
I didn't know, yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I've been smoking this for, like, 3 hours now, and I'm feeling nothing. I don't understand.
I thought the seeds were part of the deal. I thought you should eat them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so it's just funny how things have changed over the years. But
yep. Well, now kids can just order it over the internet, so it's all right.
They can. They'll deliver it to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was in California recently, and I was just shocked that you could just go, order online, just like you're ordering a sandwich or whatever, and the guy will just show up and with a bag of weed. I'm like, wow,
yes,
what a deal! What a world we live in. So,
I know. If you could go back and tell your 12-year-old self.
12? Wow.
Well, or, your teenage self, hey, just wait a few years. I would tell my older self, no, that's never going to happen. But here we are.
Man, you're lying. That's bullshit. That's never going to happen.
Exactly. You can go to a store, and they'll be all over the place, and you can buy weed of all kinds in chocolates and gummies, and I'd be like, no, that's a lie.
And not bad shit either. Good stuff.
Right. And they'll actually tell you about it and help you find the right stuff for whatever you need.
Organically grown.
Yeah. I wouldn't believe me. I'd be like, no, you're a liar.
And you still can't do it everywhere, unfortunately, but maybe someday.
Growing number of states, though. I think, was it just Connecticut, I think? Or
yeah, Connecticut and New Mexico.
Yeah, they just added to it. So
it's like 33 states now have something like that. So.
I think we talked about this before. There's got to be a tipping point at which, a large enough number of states have it. It's like, well, it just makes sense to legalize it.
There's got to be.
Federally.
Which hopefully will happen. So. I mean, this shouldn't surprise people who listen to the show, but we are pro legalization.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So it shouldn't surprise anybody. But I'm pro weed. Absolutely.
I am. And I am pro decriminalization of weed and some of the lesser.
And you shouldn't lose your spot on the Olympics because you smoked pot one time. That's stupid too. But look, and people can say, "Oh, well, she broke a rule, and she knew the rule, and she broke it." And I totally get that. But I think the larger thing is that the idea of it being criminalized or being a performance enhancer is just kind of
because that's not true.
Kind of ridiculous, but I don't know. And your buddy Seth Rogen said something on Twitter, and he was talking about how it just shows the inherent racism of the Olympics. But I don't know if I'd go that far. Although there was another incident, I guess, where the Olympics said, "Oh, you can't wear that certain kind of swim cap because it's not regulation because it was supposed to be better for people with larger hair or afros and stuff like that." And they're like, or whatever, and they're like, "Nope, you can't wear that." So
that's
people are like,
yeah.
It's like, let him wear what they. I don't know. It's just, anyway, we don't have to get into it. It's a whole thing, but it's just, what was it? The Onion. It said, "Dreams crushed by trivial bullshit is more American than a gold medal would ever be," which is true.
It's totally true.
It is, but there are rules, and I agree with following rules too. I'm also a rule person. I think that the law exists for a reason. Laws exist for reasons, but the laws also, when they don't apply anymore or when they're antiquated, they should be changed and they should be. Things should be addressed and updated for the modern times.
Well, and I also don't think laws should be like immutable or as black and white. I mean, it tells it. Well, that was an unfortunate choice, but that's
but I know what you mean. Yeah.
But I think there's a much like I've learned with mining data at work for work purposes. There is there's the law, there's the data, but there's also a story behind it, right? So I don't think they should be, I don't know. But then you get into situations where the white kid that raped people gets, 6 months in jail. The black guy that raped people gets life, right? So
or the black guy that had an ounce of weed on him goes to jail for 20 years.
Right, exactly. So I guess
that's
a bad place to be, but there's an answer out there. I just don't know what it is, but I agree. I think,
and we're not going to solve it right now, probably.
Yeah, and I think that what happened to her is bullshit and it's stupid.
Yeah, it is.
So,
anyway. It is. Wow, that was a pretty political.
Yeah, I think
section of the show. We should slip into Loki now.
Yeah, I think we just lost like half our audience.
No, they weren't there in the first place.
That's right.
We just stuck that part in the middle to surprise people. Oh, by the way, we're also living in the world too. I know we tried not to talk about COVID that much, but it came up sometimes. But these are things that are really happening, and it also provides context because anybody who says that TV and films are not political is not paying attention.
That's true.
Because they're very subversive in a lot of ways. Like we're just talking about Lovecraft Country. That is a hugely political show. And people are like, oh, man, keep the politics out of Star Trek. I'm like, have you watched Star Trek, dude?
Right. Have you ever watched any episode of Star
all
Trek?
Fucking political.
Yes.
So it's just, that's what makes good, entertaining programs and films is that it's topical. It deals with issues. So sure, it's a science fiction context if we're talking about Star Trek as an example.
Right.
But it still deals with issues that are universal to everyone, to humans in general, and the fact that people think it's not political or shouldn't be political is ridiculous. I just want my escapism. Well, that's great. Then watch the Transformers. You don't think the Transformers movies are political?
Right. No,
those robots are oppressed, man.
Excuse me. Now I'm the one coughing. No, it expands past science fiction too. I mean, a good example would be, if you don't think sitcoms are political. Look at the whole Roseanne, the Connors situation. I mean, Roseanne, the show, or especially the original one, was very much from the viewpoint of Roseanne Barr and how she felt about life, as much as she could put it in there with the writers. And then the Connors kind of shifted that a little bit, because the return of Roseanne was not obviously in a direction that she felt comfortable with, and she said some things and got fired, and it subtly shifted kind of its viewpoint, based kind of on that. So everyone's like, oh,
well, that was also economically based too,
but
because they realized that they weren't going to make as much money
Sure.
with her because she's a fucking nut bar. So.
But anything, I think any movie or any TV show you watch, there's going to be, especially movies that are of, from a singular vision of a writer director, or one writer and one director. Anything like that is going to have something in there from the creators that kind of bring across their political views, if you want to call them that, or views about life. So everything is.
Yeah, about politics, about religion, about, I mean, that's a big deal. Religion is a big deal in Loki, I think, too, because they're talking about how Loki's a god, or this or that, or, and then the variants, and then the timekeepers are the keepers of the eternal timeline or whatever. But it turns out, okay, so let's get to Loki.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Spoilers.
Let's stop this real life bullshit and get into the good stuff. So,
well, it does have something to do with real life. No, I know what you mean, but. Episode 4.
Yeah,
four. I'm sorry.
4.
The Nexus Event. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You think I would know? I would do some preparing for this episode.
Nah, that's no fun.
No. Why would you bother with that?
Yeah.
So okay. So I would say, if we're talking about Loki episodes, this is my favorite episode of the show so far.
It was so good.
It was really good, and the idea that. Well, first we should address the fact that we were wrong like about 50% of our predictions at least, but that's okay. But we were right about one big thing where, and again, spoilers for Loki if you haven't watched it, that the timekeepers were bullshit.
Yep.
And I loved how they did it. And it's like freaking the Muppet looking CG characters, and I'm like, what is this? It's absolutely
something's
fake.
Weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Because at the beginning, Ravonna goes up there and they're like, oh, the timekeepers, but they don't show them doing anything. They're just like these figures are sort of sitting there.
Right.
So, and we knew she was bad, and we knew that Loki but we were wrong about the fact that it was like a thing in someone's mind.
Yes.
That was totally off. So, which is fine, but there was some good clues there. That it was, but it just turned out not to be, apparently, because they got saved by, oh man, I want a jet ski. That's not good.
No, don't do that.
So, and there was some tragedy in this episode too.
There was a lot of tragedy,
but also some hope. So,
yes.
My favorite episode so far. What did you think?
It was really great. I mean, it's like you said. I think they've crafted the show so far really well, so that. By this episode, there was a number of theories going on, and then they kind of subverted those and played against them for the most part. I mean, obviously, the timekeeper thing turned out to be kind of right about that. But again, it seemed like almost they were subverting that in a way, because it's like top of the episode, hey, here you go, timekeepers. It's like, wait, what? Then obviously the reveal later, but no, it's really good. I mean. Again, as we said last week, it's probably a mind thing. And, as I stressed, even if it turns out not to be that, it's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to be disappointed. I think it worked just fine. And we got to see Sif. That was really cool.
Yeah, she apparently is going to come back in something else, too. But they're going to bring her character back. But
she's in the Thor movie, yeah.
Yeah, in the Thor movie, in Love and Thunder.
But that was nice it was just like... I don't know. It's one of the things about the Marvel MCU stuff. It's like it was a nice touch. They absolutely didn't have to do that. That didn't have to be his time loop. But the fact that they're like, yeah, we can put Jamie Alexander in here. We can get her for like a day of filming. Was just like,
yeah, I'm sure it was one day. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it was just like that. That was kind of nice for a throwaway scene like that. It didn't have to be someone we already knew.
I mean, it kind of did though, right? I mean, it kind of had to be someone we knew
Probably,
because
yeah.
she did survive. She did survive the attack on
Yes.
and everything, and will be coming back in another movie, so it made sense to put her in. I'm
Yeah.
sure
But
that it wasn't just some random person, but I mean, it could have been. It would have been interesting if it was Thor, but they probably couldn't afford Hemsworth for this.
yeah. But let's.
But anyway,
I
although
mean,
they, but yeah, I like the fact they brought her back. That was cool,
yes.
and it was interesting how. I mean, the beginning is a flashback, right? So Ravonna comes and takes Sylvie and arrests her for crimes against the sacred timeline, right? But we never know what those crimes are. So my question is, was she trying to recruit her
Yeah.
to be an agent of
Yes.
the TVA? So
Yeah.
that was her idea. And then, of course, in the elevator later, she's like, I don't remember what your Nexus event was because there wasn't one, probably.
Right.
Not yet.
Right. No, I think
Anyway.
I think that's like a window into how the TVA recruits new agents.
Yeah, they just kidnap kids.
Here's something that I thought about this morning, and I would have to watch the previous episodes to confirm. But have we actually seen a TVA field agent like Mobius that's not Mobius?
No, I think we've only seen Mobius
Yeah.
and then all the time cops,
Right.
all the like C-20 or B-15, all them. We've never seen another Mobius, I don't think.
Right.
No.
So I don't know what that means, but because he keeps telling Ravana, I knew I was your favorite agent, but there's no other agents that we know of.
Well, he must assume there is. I mean, the place is huge, so I mean, we've seen people like that lady in the library, and we've seen other like some of the other pawns or whatever who
Yeah.
when they come into the TVA. But yeah, I don't know that we've ever seen another like detective kind of agent.
Right. And it may just be a story thing, but I was thinking
just
about that.
wonder-
I'm like, that
yeah.
seems so, especially with the name Mobius, are there multiple agents and are they all Mobius?
Maybe, yeah, maybe. I mean, his name is Mobius.
Yep.
So
If they're variants, then
I don't know. But then would she? Because he does get pruned, right? And
Yeah.
so I mean, maybe there's others, so she doesn't care. There's another Mobius coming along.
just
Well,
thaw
people
out another Mobius and
maybe people have been speculating about that because there was like he doesn't remember putting the coaster, the rings on the table with his coaster with his drink.
right.
And he doesn't remember, some things like, he doesn't necessarily know that he's Mobius or he's like having a problem. But I mean, my private theory is I've probably said, actually it's not private, but I've said it to you at least, and probably other people have listened maybe. Are people listening? I don't know.
I don't know.
That Mobius is actually just another Loki variant.
Right,
But,
right.
who knows? Anyway, yeah, that's interesting. But she didn't have a problem pruning him, so maybe that means there are other ones. I don't know.
Yes.
Which could show why, it doesn't matter if he's dead, quote unquote, because there's just another one they thaw him out and bring him out.
Right. But that was a
now
shocking
what-
moment when Mobius got pruned. And
But you knew it was coming, and he knew it was coming too.
yes, I think he knew I'm not getting out of this alive, which is
Yeah.
probably why he resisted so long to go, yeah, there's something wrong. And then he was like, oh, I can't really deny it any longer. So,
I want to ride that jet ski. I want to go where I was happy, and
yeah, which is why
That was a good
you know,
scene.
why he is obsessed with jet skis, because that's probably what he used to do, right? So,
It was. He was like a jet ski salesman, like we talked about before.
Yeah.
But who was also really good in this episode was B-15. She did
Yeah.
a great job too. We just talked about her a minute ago, who was the actress who was in Lovecraft Country. But she had that great scene where Sylvie shows her all of her memories from her past, and she's like, "I looked happy. What
Yeah.
do we do now?" And so she knows it's all bullshit, and just is very helpful. But what happens to her?
she got knocked out, and that was
She
it.
gets knocked out in the
Which-
fight because here's the one thing that bothered me about this episode. If I have to nitpick, is that
here we
the fight scene at the end was poorly directed. I thought, or poorly done. It's kind of, or not well cut or whatever. But it was kind of hard to see a little bit what was happening, and that's why I was asking what happened to B-15. But she got knocked unconscious. Okay,
Yes.
so fine.
Yeah, after she threw Sylvie the sword, the other guys started fighting her, and they clocked her.
They
and
knocked
she
her
dropped.
out. Okay, yeah, I seem to remember that, but it's
Yeah.
just like it just happened sort of matter of factly.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, she seems a little bit tougher than that, but okay.
Well, she does, and the fact that she got knocked out so easily, yeah, maybe that was the
But-
thing that I was responding to too. It's strange, but
I kind of
of course-
chalked that up to that they had a lot to do in a short amount of time. So, they could.
Well, that's it. That's true too. They probably had to cut that down. That whole scene might have been longer.
Yeah.
But I mean, the point is that the heroes, quote unquote, need to solve the problem, not some third party character or the supporting character. So it needs to be Loki and Sylvie who come to this realization. And it was interesting that Sylvie is the one who beheaded the timekeeper.
Yeah.
And not Loki. Although I guess she's Lady Loki, or the goddess of mischief, as she called herself, the goddess.
I think she'll be. I think she'll choose to be called the Enchantress, even though that's not necessarily the origin of the Enchantress in the.
If she
in
survives
the, comics,
show.
Well, yeah.
Although I don't think that you would bring a character in like this and make her so interesting and just abandon her. I mean, because there's multiple timelines, right? She can go back to her timeline, although it got pruned, so maybe she
Sure.
can't. But she could still exist. Well, what would she do? I wonder if she'd take over the TVA, or
so she's like, I'm going to be
time.
the Enchantress, and maybe go off and do mischief, or we have 2 episodes left. Something further happens where she's just like, I'm going to be an out and out bad guy. I don't know.
Maybe her and Loki go somewhere together.
I do like the whole thing of him falling in love with himself, which is great.
Because who else could a giant narcissist fall in love with but himself, right?
But and it's the subtext too of, so Loki can be decent now because he's learned to love himself, right? So
it's a bit of psychology too.
Yeah.
I mean, Mobius even says that, just you could be anything you want. You could even be good, just in case no one ever told you that. So
right.
It's like, oh, and I think he seemed genuinely hurt when Mobius got pruned.
Yeah, no, that was.
He seemed very bummed out.
Yes.
Would you believe the word of a friend, and then he gets killed? So, so he's capable of emotion. He's capable of being good. Obviously he is, because in the other timeline he became good, kind of a hero, still self-centered, but a hero.
Yeah.
And so that is always in him. And so
it's not too far of a stretch. And like I said last week, he's having to go through that a lot quicker because a lot more is occurring in a short amount of time right now. So I like the evolution of this Loki, and it's not quite the same as I don't know. Hiddleston's just really good at playing things on his face and subtlety, and he's doing really well with this role, especially this episode. So
he is definitely doing it well, and she's really good. Sofia DiMartino is really good too.
Yeah.
I think they have a good chemistry together, and the idea that he's like, I need to tell you this. He's like, what? What? Finally, because she feels it too, I think. And then, it all goes to shit.
Here's the funny thing, though, because in our family, I think we've watched way too many shows and movies, because I watched this with Melanie, my wife, and my oldest son, Jack. And at the moment that Loki got pruned, we all 3 were immediately like, all right, so that doesn't actually destroy them, because they wouldn't do that with the main. I mean, it was like, oh, okay, so that's not a final thing now because you just did that to the main character. Like,
right, which means Mobius is someplace too.
Right,
where all
exactly.
The Mobius variants are, right?
So it was pretty funny that we were just like, oh, yep, we know. And so then when, and I had heard, mid-credits sequence, when that came around, I was like, well, okay, well, that's obvious. So,
And then Mother effing Richard E. Grant shows up, man.
Yes, but my favorite and most compelling mystery from that scene is Gator Loki.
Kid Loki?
No.
Kid Loki, yeah.
No, Gator Loki.
Yeah. Well,
he's holding an alligator with the Loki tiara on it. It's a Loki that's an alligator. I mean, that's cool. Sure. Come on.
Well, they credit him as Kid Loki. They don't credit the gator though in the show.
No, because he's CGI.
But Kid Loki, it's right. But no, and the funny thing is, I saw some speculation where is it the alligator that's talking in Richard E. Grant's voice, because you never actually see him speak, right?
Right.
But that was good. That was a great thing. I knew that Richard E. Grant was in the show. I just didn't know who he was going to play necessarily. So,
he's
it's awesome.
Classic Loki.
come with us if you want to live, basically.
What I think would be funny is if he does the voice for the gator, but his version of Loki, for whatever reason, doesn't speak. that would be a nice flip.
That'd be interesting. Yeah,
and they're not going to do that, but still.
No, the thing is that what's interesting is that's post-apocalyptic New York, right?
Yeah.
And you see kind of Avengers Tower in the background,
right?
But not the Avengers Tower from, in theory, when the timeline would be
Right.
for the apocalypse, basically when Loki would have destroyed New York with Thanos back in the day.
Exactly.
So, or for Thanos, because it's a different building, kind of. So I'm wondering, it's another multiverse event or something, or it's the planet of misfit Lokis or whatever, or the island of misfit Lokis. But so obviously Loki's not dead, and so that means Mobius isn't dead.
Right.
So I wonder if we'll see a scene where Mobius is in a place with jet skis and like 20 different Mobiuses all jet skiing at the same time.
They do like one of those towers that the water skiers do and stuff
like
that.
The Go-Go's vacation video, which
exactly.
no one will get that reference except you, probably.
Yes.
But,
no, that would be that. I would pay a premium to see that in an episode.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
It might happen, man. It might happen. But you don't get. I mean, I guess you do, maybe, but maybe you don't get someone like Owen Wilson to be in the show and then kill him off either. So I imagine he'll come back. Obviously, Hiddleston's coming back because he's the star of the show, and they already showed him. And I think Loki has a part to play further in the MCU, so I'm sure he'll be around. But I'm interested to see what happens with. There was a moment, by the way, if you agree, there was a moment when Ravonna wanted to die.
Yes.
Or wanted to get pruned, right? She's like, do it.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if she knows that she's also a bad person and she's been corrupted by, let's just say corrupted by Kang, because that's probably who it is.
Yeah.
And that she wanted to be, she wanted to end it and be pruned.
Like one of those things where she's in too far at this point, and the only way out is to be pruned.
Right. And she's like, I've done too many bad things, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, obviously that's not going to happen.
Unless she knows that pruning doesn't kill him.
Well, she does know that, I'm sure. But she does know that because she just did it. And she knows pruning doesn't do anything except send them someplace else.
Yes. Because I think that's the only reason because maybe that's like her ace in the hole is removing Mobius from the table, basically, and putting him and Loki someplace where they can actually supposedly not exist anymore, but can now actually do something to stop Kang or whoever's behind it.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. She does know, right, that it doesn't do anything. And so the question is, that's like her escape, right? Like you said, that she knows that if she gets pruned, she can always come back.
Right.
So she was like, oh, you can do it. So maybe she didn't want to die. That's interesting, even though it seemed like she did, but maybe she was just trying to goad her into doing it. So yeah, that's an interesting point that I didn't think of until you just mentioned it. So thank you.
Right. So maybe
well done.
Maybe we'll find out like other people that she's intentionally pruned to kind of set them up as, her secret army or whatever. So
yeah, maybe.
But so do you think where Loki is just Loki's and Mobius is in a place just Mobius, or the place where Loki is at the end is like all of the people that have been pruned?
Do you think it's just?
Because I think that would be kind of a little too convoluted if it was like your own. If it was just Loki's there, it's got to be some weird dimension where everyone that gets pruned goes to. So
maybe, but why would it be like post-apocalyptic New York?
I don't know. Maybe it's like a fragment of something that was. Maybe it was like the first. Here, so now I'm getting way in the weeds. Maybe it was like the first branch that they tried to eliminate and it didn't work or something, and for whatever reason it isolated itself, and that's where they figured out they can send people when they prune them. I don't know. Kind of like the negative zone,
Well, that's interesting. But why would only Loki's be there? And why
I don't
would they
think
know
it's
he was
only
coming?
Loki's. I don't think it's
no,
only
but I
Loki's.
mean, in the scene though, when they show them, it's just all the Loki variants, and they're like, "How did he know he was coming?" First of all, because they're like standing there waiting for him or something. But it's like,
well, they probably found him after he appeared.
Yeah, maybe he was unconscious for a while,
right?
Yeah,
and they obviously would know at a certain point that random Lokis or other pruned people are likely to just pop up at any time. So they're probably at least somewhat aware of when, oh, hey, somebody else is here.
Yeah,
so.
Maybe it's more of a big explosion or something.
Yes,
or a big light
bolt
show
of lightning
just drop from the sky. Or
very,
whatever,
very
like the Bifrost.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe. I'll be interested to see what happens. Obviously,
I'm
intrigued. But, there was a lot of good build-up for this episode. And I like the fact that they show previously on Loki. Because I never used to watch that kind of thing. But now I've been watching it because there are definitely the things they highlight in the previously definitely come into play in the episode. They're really good about that on this show in particular.
Yes.
So yeah, kudos to all the team who made this episode.
Yeah, really, really excellent
well
episode, and I don't even know where it's going to go from here because they definitely went against what I thought was going on, which is good. I always like that because
No, but we thought that, but we knew the timekeepers were fake, and we knew it was a whole fake thing. But we got to find who's pulling the strings, which is probably Kang. It's not just Ravonna on her own, obviously.
No.
But she seems to be the only one in the know, right? Everyone else seems to be just following her orders, but she seems to be the one tied into Kang because obviously in the comics she and Kang have a relationship. So
yes. Well,
that makes sense. I don't know. I say obviously, but no, not everybody knows that. But in the comics they have a relationship, and so she just basically is because Kang is a former judge or is he a former timekeeper? I forget. I thought he was a former
Kang
TVA agent or something.
Guy, he's been
but he. I thought he worked at the TVA or was a time agent or something at one point. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
Maybe not.
There's so many comics; it's hard to remember.
They change it all the time, so it's hard to keep.
That's
up.
true. It'll be whatever serves this story. But I think we'll find that she's not the one in charge. She's just another pawn, basically, being manipulated by a larger purpose. Probably Mephisto, right? It's Mephisto.
Or it's going to wind up being Agatha all along.
It's been Agatha all along.
Agatha all along. That would be great. That would be kind of funny, actually.
Hey, well, it's funny because like some of the symbols, like the red symbols in various parts of the TVA, are similar to the ones that Agatha was using to sort of stop magic from. So it's all it all kind of ties together. I'm sure that's not an accident. But
so the other theory I saw online, it's the only one I have left that is still plausible, was that the whole TVA, all the buildings and their headquarters and whatever exists in the quantum realm.
Yeah, that was they showed that in one of the Ant-Man movies. They showed the quantum realm, right? So they showed that city. Yeah, that was supposedly Chronopolis, right? But maybe. So you think the TVA exists in Chronopolis somewhere?
Yeah, I think, and that kind of makes sense. I mean, especially Mobius saying, "Oh yeah, time works differently here." And then it seems to be this vast city. It's like, so where does it exist if it isn't like in some other realm or dimension or something?
It exists for all time,
right?
Always.
And I think also,
that's interesting.
Isn't the showrunner for Loki like involved with the next Ant-Man movie or something like that? So.
I think so. But yeah, and well, that makes sense because if you get pruned, you get sent back to the real timeline, right?
Right.
No, the creator of Loki is doing Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, okay, that's right. I thought somebody
Michael
from
Waldron.
Loki was involved with Ant-Man, but I could be wrong.
Well, no, but I mean,
hard to keep track of all this stuff.
Multiverse, I mean, you can make the case that the multiverse already exists. I mean, they basically established the fact that it does exist, so you don't have to create it. The TVA is not going to create the multiverse.
Right.
The TVA exists to, subjugate, the universe. It's part of Kang's plan to dominate the timeline and the multiverses, I suppose. But yeah, I think that definitely was Chronopolis in the quantum realm, and I agree with you. I think that they're all in that city.
Yeah.
And that's where. When you get pruned, you get sent back to the regular timeline, like when Ant-Man comes out of the quantum realm. You embiggen,
yes. But you don't need a rat to press buttons this time. You don't
happens. Need a rat. You have a thing that'll just send you back. So that's when you get pruned. So that's I like that idea, and I think that makes sense. I mean, it might turn out to be bullshit, but it's the only sort of time, travel kind of thing that makes sense that we've seen. I mean, they might just bring something else new, but they've already sort of established it, and it did come back obviously in Endgame because they have to travel through the quantum realm for time,
right?
And so, yeah, that follows. That actually makes sense. So
yeah, so I mean, again, that could be completely wrong, but it does make sense.
This isn't about Loki necessarily, but there was somebody I saw something online where they were talking about how the ending of the finale of WandaVision had been changed slightly.
Yes, I heard about that. There was like a shadow input, but
they added there was you can see like a shadow kind of coming down the mountain, and you can see that there's more trees now behind the thing. But the theory was, and this actually makes sense if you've ever seen a Sam Raimi film, that was Sam Raimi's ending. He directed that, which is why the camera sort of floats across the water and all the way. And so that is Doctor Strange's astral form, right?
So we'll see that scene again.
Yeah,
in
he's
Doctor
floating
Strange.
across
Okay.
the water and coming to the cabin to confront Wanda, and that's why Wanda looks up, because she sees him.
Oh, that could be. All right.
But there was definitely they definitely altered the finale, and they took out some birds, they took out some other things, they added some trees. So the theory was that there's going to be a fight between him and Wanda, and this is maybe the beginning of Wanda of Multiverse of Madness. So they have this huge battle in the forest or whatever, and so that's why they had to add trees. I don't know, it's speculation, but then I went back and watched the old version, and it is different. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Although I
to me,
did see a
so.
theory that the supposed silhouette or whatever, it was just a camera artifact or a CGI artifact.
Right, it was a CGI artifact. Yeah, but they definitely took out birds. They definitely added more trees.
Right.
They definitely changed the shadows and stuff. And why? Why would they bother? Right.
Well, if they were, upfitting it and adding more detail so it would look better in a scene in a movie, then that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's possible. And it's just a matter of, of increasing the resolution of the CG or whatever. I mean, I don't know what resolution they do it at. Originally in the computers, maybe it's 4K when they're building it. But yeah, I mean, it has to be projected on a larger screen.
Right.
And it has to tie into Multiverse of Madness, obviously. So
Yeah.
I just brought, that was kind of an aside, but we are talking about multiverse and all that stuff. So I thought it was interesting that there's, A, that people pay attention and noticed it, and B, that there's whole videos about it. But then I watched it, and it actually is different. So,
So yes, Michael Waldron is also the writer. He's the creator of the Loki show. He's also the writer for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And apparently, while they were working on Loki and prepping the Ant-Man movie, he worked closely with their production because of the quantum realm. So we'll see. But it makes sense.
You just got to think like in Feige's office, there's a gigantic whiteboard, right?
Yes.
That has the brackets for all the finals of a sport, like the NBA finals or like the final, the college basketball thing. It's like all these movies lead down to this, and they all have these things that cross over, and it's like a huge thing that he has to keep track of, because it's not on a computer somewhere. It's got to be a giant whiteboard.
Oh yeah, he's probably got like a wall as a whiteboard.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's a giant wall of whiteboards and Post-its. It's like this connects to this, and this connects to that. And it's just they have to keep track of it, but it still amazes me in some ways how all of this stuff ties together, and how obviously people are thinking about it, and they're planning it, and they're tying things together, just like you do in the comics, right? So, and people like, it's so obvious, but et cetera, et cetera. But it's not that easy, because other studios have tried to do it and done it poorly,
Right.
So Marvel, / Disney now, but they're the only ones who seem to have been able to do it, and do it with huge amount of success. I mean, over 10 years of this tying together shit, and mostly working, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I know.
So good for them.
I know people are like, oh, they're just making a lot of money off this, but it's not. I don't see it as a cash grab, because they're actually caring about the details and how they're made, and as you said, how they fit together and flow. I mean, Michael Waldron was talking about, in several interviews about making Thor, about it was important that he worked with the writer to make sure everything was plotted out, planned, and accounted for, because he knew. And he says, we have a week between episodes, and fans are absolutely going to pull it apart. So it's got to make sense, and it's all got to work. Otherwise, we kind of betray the audience and betray the story. And it's like that kind of thinking is pretty amazing. And having the scale of people that they have working on these, and it all interconnects, it all makes sense, and it all works is pretty great. And I think a lot of that is Feige.
It doesn't all interconnect. Sometimes they have problems.
Yeah,
there's
some glitches.
There's things that don't go anywhere, and there's glitches and whatever. And I think part of the beauty of having these shows is that you can somehow, and we talked about this before, you can kind of like not retcon, but you can kind of adjust storylines and add some detail to sort of fix some things, or take them in different directions, which is great. And I agree with you. I don't think they're trying to half-ass this stuff. I mean, they're spending a lot of money on these shows.
Right.
I mean, they're spending a lot of money on the launch of Disney Plus. They're spending a lot of. I mean, Disney Plus obviously needs content.
But they could. That's the thing. They could just be like, oh, let's
They could just
do another
yeah.
Captain America movie. But I don't think they'd be as successful. I think the draw and the success of it is how much they put into it and how detailed it is and all the callbacks and all that kind of stuff. So
well, and they can take time to develop stuff too. I mean, people in a movie you wouldn't get nearly as much detail about character and everything. I mean, the reason some way that these stories have worked so well in the movies is that they're still developed over several films. So like Loki's arc in the MCU movies is like what 4 or 5 movies at least, right? So he changes over time,
right.
And the same way he does in the series, he kind of has, this is what 6 episodes or 7 episodes? I forget.
6. Yeah. 7. So we have 2 more.
Okay, so that's basically 6 hours,
right?
Give or take 5.5 hours of story, which is what a couple of movies at least. So
yeah.
It's that kind of you can get more into the detail, and you can take time, and you can and you can have characters sit down and have conversations that they couldn't have had in a movie because shit's got to move on. You got to get to the next scene. You got to blow some shit up. Whereas in this, you can have Sylvie and Loki sitting there developing a relationship. You can have Mobius and Loki develop a relationship. So when Mobius is pruned, Loki's genuinely bummed out, and you can see how that developed.
Right.
And you couldn't necessarily do that in a movie. I mean, you could kind of, but it's like when Thor sees Loki get killed by Thanos. Spoiler.
Yes.
You feel his genuine emotion because even though they've had a tough relationship,
they're brothers, yeah.
They're brothers, and you feel his emotions. I mean, partially it's because Hemsworth is good, but it's also because there's been 10 years of this shit, and you're like, you feel his pain, and that's good storytelling. And so, the idea that the same thing can exist on TV, and again, the separation between TV and movies is far less than it used to be because they're spending what $100 million on this show. It's
yeah,
like
exactly.
Pocket change in the Disney couches. It's they're spending some money, and so will we get the same level of shows next year? I don't know.
Who knows?
I mean, partially it was because of COVID, obviously, and partially it was like they were going to do this anyway. But they've set a high bar, and so we'll see if they can maintain it. But yeah, this episode, the Nexus Event, is a great and also an ironic title in a way because Sylvie's Nexus Event kind of doesn't happen until she meets Loki, and then they have this giant one, right? Which is cool. So anyway,
I just love the way it was shot too, because I like the whole kind of quiet conversation scene between Loki and Sylvie as literally the world they're on is ending. It was just like,
that was the shot that everyone was like convinced that was Black Widow, right?
Right.
People were talking about how he's sitting there with Natasha. It's like, no, that's not Natasha.
No.
Even though her hair does look kind of red in one shot, but
that's true. Yeah,
it wasn't her. But
and it's kind of purple lighting like it was on what you call it. So yeah, I could see that, but unfortunately, no.
So, no. Well, I'm looking forward to Black Widow. That's coming up pretty soon too.
That is next week as we record this episode. It comes out.
Yeah, so that's exciting stuff. I will pay extra to watch that, but I won't have to.
Yes.
But I will.
Yes, absolutely.
I get stuff sometimes, so I think I've already got that film somewhere.
Nice.
But anyway, it doesn't matter.
I will absolutely pay the premium to
why
watch
not?
it. Yep.
And if enough people do that, they'll do that more often. They'll release stuff. I mean, you can still go see it in the theater if you want to, but I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Anyway, but this episode of Loki, really well done. Great job to everybody. Eric Martin, the writer of the episode. The Kate Herron director. I mean, she directs all the episodes, but
yes,
everyone did a great job. And Hiddleston and Sophie DiMartino and everybody just was. The nice thing is too, it's like 4 episodes in, right? So people have hit their stride. They're kind of in the, they know their characters. They're doing their best work at this point.
Yes.
And so, although you don't know what order these were shot in, but you assume kind of in episodic order, maybe, but not always. Sometimes they're like, I'm at a location and now I've got to shoot this. So like the stuff at RoxCon or whatever it was, the store, maybe they shot all that in one day because they're not going to go back just for that one scene.
Oh, right. Yeah. So the scene in this one,
yeah. So that kind of, so she, that probably came up later in the schedule, but she does a great job.
Especially since it was raining in both. They're not going to restage all that. They're just going to shoot that all in one. Yeah.
Well, it's funny to me that it's a cataclysmic event or whatever,
Right.
but it's funny how it was raining the whole time. So yeah, that was all one day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what you do. That's how you shoot things.
Yeah.
As people might know, you don't
In movies, you do that.
shoot
Yeah.
necessarily in order.
Yeah.
You're gonna. I have like, if I have all the scripts to the series, I'm like, these scenes take place all in the same place. So this day we're gonna shoot all that stuff,
Right.
if we can, because we're not gonna keep going back to the same locations. Because most of this is stage at Pinewood Studios in Atlanta, but also there's some exterior stuff like the Roxxon thing, or it's not Roxxon, but it's Roxcon or Rox Store, Roxco, yeah. Costco basically.
Yeah.
Which is cool, but yeah, it's a great episode. If you haven't been watching Loki, it's definitely worth watching for sure, especially if you're a Marvel fan. It does start a little slow. They do, I mean, not slow, but it starts deliberately, as I like to say.
Yes, deliberately is a better word.
And but it's building now, and it's definitely building to something. Maybe we'll get into, after we watch next week's episode, maybe we'll get into more predictions about how we think it's going to wrap up.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we will.
Because we did pretty well with WandaVision and pretty well with Falcon and Winter Soldier, I think, a little bit. I mean,
I think
Winter Soldier did go back and meet his girlfriend at the sushi place. So
exactly. I think we would have been more accurate about WandaVision if they hadn't changed it. Honestly.
Yeah, exactly. It's their fault.
I think their original intent was what we were thinking. I'm just saying that because make us look good.
Exactly.
Because it's easy.
Exactly.
It's just like those articles. The other articles. I have a lot of articles I hate, but this one, the other kind of sub one, you only see every once in a while, are the people that are like revealing spoilers for movies that haven't been made yet, and they're like, but they always follow that up with, well, and of course, writing can change between now and production. So if this doesn't happen, that's because they changed it. It's like, no, that doesn't happen because you're full of shit. But
well, we're not full of shit. It's like anything else. It's just speculation. We're just like, this is the evidence that we have based on our knowledge of the Marvel universe.
Well, we're like that,
comics.
But these articles are like, our insider tells us that,
and how movies and TV work,
and
and storytelling works. Our understanding of it anyway.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, there are basics of storytelling that you don't abandon. There, you can definitely subvert some tropes or whatever, if we want to say that. But in the end, it's a journey for the characters. They have an arc and they develop over time. And Loki's going to change over time, and Sophie is going to change over time, or Lady Loki or whatever. And things are going to evolve. Sylvie, thank you.
Yes.
And you're going to, a lot of times where you started is where you end.
Yes.
And and a lot of times people always say, oh, the best screenwriting advice is you figure out the ending and work backwards and tell the story up to that. How do you get to that point? So
right. Yeah.
There's an ending for the show, and they already know what it is, obviously, because they've already shot it. But it's, I always wonder how things change, though, because they were shooting Loki, and then they had to stop because of COVID. And I wonder, because then the writers are like, well, gosh, maybe we should, so I wonder
have
how
some
things
time.
changed. We have some time to rethink this shit.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if things changed much during the pandemic, but we'll never know, I guess, because they can't talk about it, and they probably never will.
No,
I mean, they're inside a circle. Their friends and family probably know, or maybe they don't. But
they know. That's all that matters.
Us as basically outsiders can only speculate, which is fine, and it's enjoyable. And I don't take it that seriously. I don't get that bummed out about it when I'm wrong, because I'm wrong frequently. It's fine. So
yes, but anything that we predict, if it doesn't happen on the show, it's because the producers listened to us and they went and altered the show before it aired so that we would be wrong.
Right, and they changed everything during the pandemic because it was
it's all our fault. I'm telling you,
it's all our fault. Yeah. So all right, so find the Flickcast on Apple Podcasts and on Stitcher, on Google Podcasts, and all the other places you find podcasts. And if you like the show, or are even moderately happy with the way it turned out over the years, feel free to go and give us a rating or a review, even on Apple Podcasts.
Yes.
Again, because that's the best place for algorithm stuff. And then you can find us on the socials at the Flickcast, and at Chris Yu, that's me, and at What Joe Writes, that's Joe. Shockingly,
I know
it's even got his name in the thing.
It's crazy.
And if you do like the show and you want to support us with cash, say it with cash, you can go to patreon.com/theflickcast and throw us a few bucks. Again, that doesn't go into our pockets. It just goes to to buy stuff for the show. Like, Joe needs a microphone, or
Right.
or for hosting, for whatever. It's like we make money on this thing too much. I mean, I'm not going to retire on the Flickcast money. Definitely.
No, that's that. Well,
I'm already kind of retired anyway, but I'm not retiring on the Flickcast money. That's for sure.
if all of you could just give $1 for the price of a cup of coffee,
For the price of a cup of coffee, it looks like $5.
you could support this show. You could be like grandma and send us $10 a month in a card.
And send a check for $10.
Yeah, and send us a nice card. Those are always
cash
welcome.
those checks. I always felt weird about it. It's like a check for $10. I'm like, who's gonna?
I don't know.
Who's gonna cash that? Although I'd like to find those checks now. They're probably around here somewhere, but
I'm sure they're not valid anymore. But
probably not. How long do checks last? I mean, what's a check? People are like, what the fuck are they talking about?
it's like
What's
a
check?
year or something like that.
It's a piece of paper that you write numbers on and stuff, and
You can get money for it. It's crazy.
it doesn't even. I still go to some places and see signs that says no personal checks. I'm like, does anyone still write a check? I don't know. I don't.
Every once in a while at the grocery store, I'll be in line behind someone that's like, I'm going to write a check. And I'm like, you're conning this place, aren't you? Because those aren't real.
Those aren't real. What a scam.
Yeah. What is that? No,
I
jeez.
don't know. It just it doesn't make any sense. Now you can just pay with your phone. Come on, lady.
Right. Come on. Everyone's doing it. Let's go.
Or pay with your watch. I can pay with my watch now. I don't even have to have a phone or a wallet on me.
And then the guy can't run the check through the thing, right? And it's like, God, I could be home by now. Come on.
Right. You got to flip it around, man. Flip it around.
White people problems for sure.
Yeah.
So.
I'm in line at Whole Foods and it's not working out.
Yes.
A check.
I'm trying to buy my $20 bag of apples and my $50 peanut butter, and you're holding me up.
My $20 bag of organic Fuji apples.
Right.
Thank you.
You're holding me up. Come on.
You're holding me up, man. What a world. Anyway, all right. So for Joel Dilworth, I'm Chris Ulrich. That was the Flickcast. Thanks so much for listening.